Well, let's talk about ambiguous grief. What exactly is ambiguous grief and loss, and what do we do about it? So, I'm Dr. Virginia, double board certified psychiatrist and lifestyle medicine physician, and we are going to be talking about something that was actually coined back in the 1970s by Dr. Pauline Boss. She wrote a series of books in the recent past, within the mid 2000s, around 2020, 21. She wrote books about what ambiguous loss is and what we can do about it. Although she, again, first coined the term many, many years ago. It's basically when a person appears or seems like they're frozen, almost frozen in time, really, because of the grief that they're experiencing. There's really no closure. And there are actually two types. One is where the person is physically there, but mentally there may be something going on. So they're not, you might say, not all there, right? Or at least not the way that they had been in the past. The other is when their body is gone, but you don't necessarily know what's happened to them. So I'll talk about the one that's gained more popularity in recent times, and that's basically the one where the person's body is there, and then unfortunately, what might happen is you don't get a chance to really have closure about something that you normally would have closure with. Let's say that person was, gosh, I don't know. Let's say they have Alzheimer's disease or Alzheimer's dementia. That's one of the most popular ones. It's like the person's body's there, but mentally they're not the same person that they used to be, right? Let's say it's your mother. I'm going to use that as an example because I had a patient recently who explained exactly what this was like for her, and I think it might help you. She basically said people were confused as to why, when her mother finally transitioned, when she died, her body died, why she wasn't sad, why she didn't cry, why she actually seemed, joyful a bit. Well, there are two reasons for that. One, she explained that she said goodbye to her mother really many, many years ago. One of the last times that she noticed that her mom was lucid after many years of mom kind of waxing and waning. When mom was fairly lucid and they actually had a tearful, I know I'm not always going to be with you. I know that this disease is taking its toll, and I want to have my time to say goodbye while I'm lucid. And in that sense, they said their goodbyes. And then mom basically deteriorated to the point of returning almost to infancy, needing to be fed, needing diapers, no longer knowing who they were or who the person that was caring for them was. That is a typical example of what we think about, where the physical presence is there, the physical body is there, but mentally they're not, right? There's a psychological absence. And so in that case, when mom did transition, they're Christians or believers, mom went to heaven. So she was rejoicing because mom doesn't have to go through any pain anymore. No more pain, tears, suffering on this side, all glory on the other side. So that's an example. Alzheimer's isn't the only one. If a person has a traumatic brain event, we often in medical school learn about Phineas Cage, who had a brain injury where he really should have died. They thought he was going to die, but it basically took out the portion of his brain, portion of the frontal lobe, where the majority of his previous personality was, and his ability to control desires, executive functioning, major cognitive functioning were gone. This was a completely new person. He was mean, he was cantankerous, he was violent, aggressive. He was not the Phineas Cage before the accident. So there had to be a grieving of that. His physical body was there, but psychologically, he was not the same person. We can also see this with mental illness and drug and substance abuse. The person that's there when they're clean and sober before the drugs may be incredibly different from the person who is addicted. You used to have this loving, trustworthy family member. Now you have someone that lies to you, they steal from you. You don't know who they are. You just don't know them anymore because they're just different. Clean and sober, they're one person. In non-recovery version of them, they are totally different, not the same person. Those are examples. I want to add one, which is autism, because I don't think we think about it that often. But as soon as I started seeing a lot of press about ambiguous grief, I was like, boom, this is what you deal with to some extent with a person with autism, including a mental illness. we don't think about it the same way. Honestly, I would say that we may have a category 3 where the physical presence is there. Sometimes you see the person that you know or knew, right? This may be, for example, in several cases, a child advances to a certain period and then loses or regresses, right? They used to have maybe certain personality quirks or certain personality engagement with you, socialization, and then there's a regression of that. That could be an example. Also, with autism, there is the grief experience of, I'm not going to get to see this child do XYZ. And so I have to grieve that. And there really is no place in how Dr. Boss has delineated type 1 and type 2. But that's why I advocate possibly for a 2B or a type 3, which is you have someone on the autism spectrum where you're grieving some of the things that you maybe had expected that you're not going to see. Another one that might fall in this category might be something like a marriage, okay, where you're grieving the expectation that you had. Another one might be a dream or a job, or again, I'm going to go back to marriage, but thinking from the in-law perspective, things were one way when you were engaged and then you got married and things totally shifted, right? You were friends with your in-laws and all of you got together and everything was hunky-dory, and then something shifted and now it's like a huge level of animosity. And so there's a grief process that goes through that. So just my little humble, hey, maybe let's think about a third type. The type 1, going back to that, that's where there's the physical absence, but the psychological presence. So that would be any missing person, really, or the example of a divorce or a separation, incarceration, prisoner of war, natural disaster, where you're grieving the fact that the person is no longer there physically. And there's this hope against hope, right? On the one hand, it's, well, maybe we'll still be able to find this person. Maybe we'll still, maybe they're still going to come home. And so on the one hand, you want to hope and believe that they're still alive, that they're still out there, that I can still find them. But then on the other hand, everyone around you is basically saying, hey, let's just have a memorial service. Let's just go through the process of burying them because we're pretty sure they're gone. Right? This is a sticky wicket because if a person comes into mental health, we previously didn't have anything. Now we have something called prolonged or complicated grief and bereavement. We can use that title for any of these things, including all of the things I just mentioned about ambiguous loss. So I think that could potentially be helpful. So I wanted to pause there. I do see someone who was over here on TikTok, and they were actually inviting me to come in and explain some things to them. But I didn't jump on that because I wasn't finished explaining the concept, and I like to do that. So if you do want to invite me to come on and have conversation, you have a specific question, certainly I'd love to be able to do that. I think that'd be kind of fun. But I do like to be able to at least teach the concept so that there's no confusion or ambiguity when I do that. Okay. All right. So again, ambiguous grief, 2 main types. Either the person's there, but mentally, the body's there, but mentally something's happened where they're not there in the way that you thought. Or type 1, where the body's not there, the person's not there, and you're really struggling to figure out what's going on. And I'm proposing possibly a subcategory of either of those, or maybe a third portion, which are for people that their body's there and there's a portion of them that is psychologically still present, but the expectation is not there. And again, this might be something like with a person with autism, or any situation with a child where there were certain expectations and you no longer see the results of those. For example, this child, I may never see go to prom. I may never see them get married. They may not have children, and I have to deal with that grief. There was a marriage expectation. Sometimes we think about divorce where I don't get to see the fruit of it the way that I thought that I would see it, or a separation for a variety of reasons. Immigration is an example. That's usually put under number one, but there are some cases where they're still physically present. They may still be psychologically present, but there are nuances related to it. So those are just some examples, and I hope this is really helpful for you, especially for those who are living this, those who are going through this at this time. All right, again, Dr. Regina, and I want you guys to have hold on. I was going to say a very blessed day on purpose.